Hi, my name is Eva Steiner, and this is my project Psychotherapists Around the Globe. I am interviewing the psychotherapists around the world and asking them the same 8 questions. I am wondering how mental health profession is in their country. Today we are going to... Thank you for doing this interview with me. Before we start, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Luna Elizabeth Sanabria. I am 26 years old. I am from Paraguay, a little country from South America. I have been a psychotherapist since 2021. I'm currently having some private patients, but I also been working with a couple of other therapies as a group. Also, I am a transgender woman. It's not a common thing in my country, in my society. It's actually, we're not having laws that protect us yet, but we're still working for empowerment ourselves and our rights.
Tell me a little bit about your culture. What is some holiday or tradition that your country celebrates? And if your culture would be an emotion, what emotion would it be?
I am from South America, which means we have a really tropical temperature. It's really hot in here. Usually we got 34 degrees to even 40 degrees Celsius. So we are living in this environment. So we need to take care of ourselves. I like to share a significant festival from my country, even though I don't personally participate on it. It's the day of the Virgin of Cacupe in December 8th. Many people travel to the city of Cacupe to visit a religious symbol in the form of a Virgin Mary. It is adapted to all culture, and I chose this festival because it reflects how deeply belief and magical thinking are ingrained in the minds of the majority of the citizens, comprising over 85% of our country population. This day is a holiday, which means that most of the people are free from their duties. The loyal believers of the Immaculate Conception tracks their way by foot to the Cathedral Basilica in that city, asking for the wishes to become true by this entity. By foot, we're talking about very hot. So people are really intense in their feelings about the Virgin. Well, I emphasize the strong influence of religion because many people choose to try to deal with their problems through religion, leading to a situation where mental disorders are attempted to be cured by priestesses than being treated by medical health professionals. Yeah, it was a pretty common idea of, well, by praying or by just believing, you could be cured by the illnesses, by or depression, anxiety. But this is a thought that it's slowly changing here.
You feel it's changing among the younger generations or among all people?
I can see a trend by young people which thinking in another form, in another way, or view things differently. But old people still got power enough to force some younger generations to do some religious things rather than looking for a professional. But mental health has been improving.
And if your culture would be an emotion, what emotion would it be?
If I were to describe my country with an emotion, it will be the fear. Repression has been a determining factor through the development of my country. The dictatorship led by Alfredo Stroessner significantly limited the ability to people to express themselves or publish their opinions until the year of 1989. However, the mindset based of the fear of going against the government ideals has created a country that is afraid to speak and demand rights. The fear is still installed in the family of our parents and lingers till today. And for many, living without the questioning remains as a mechanism for dealing with the frustration. We would rather to be quiet than express what is problem of ourselves, of our families, of the society. That's a really sad thing, but this has been changing a little by little.
And it's common still today that people are afraid to speak up and share the opinion?
Yes, people still afraid of innovating things. We're rather having little changes, not so much, but it's changing by step by step.
Okay, so how did you become a psychotherapist, and what is your psychotherapeutic approach?
First, I would like to say that in Paraguay, in the most recognized university, the psychology program is typically lasts around 5 years, includes an internship period covering clinical, organizational, and educational areas. I was fortunate to complete my undergraduate studies in 6 years, thanks to pandemic situation. My university experience provided me with the opportunity to explore various psychological approaches, and I was able to extract tools from both cognitive behavioral therapy and psychoanalysis. We have a really strong influence by psychoanalysis proposed by Freud here, thanks to Argentina also. But is cognitive behavioral therapy is pretty common too. Similarly, last year I pursued a specialization in forensic and legal psychology, and this year I have to obtain my work license to work as an auxiliary psychologist in the justice system. In this clinical field, I initially work through psychological assessments, and once the intervention are complete, I offer the possibility to accessing a suitable treatment for the individuals. I enjoy working with multidisciplinary approach because while I consider my field to be work important, I believe it's always crucial to provide an holistic perspective, including biological and social parts. I had the opportunity to work as an intern in the public system, which is breaking. There we do more psychodiagnostic.
And with the psychotherapy approaches, you learn them in university, or you also have like a special course or specialization where you can pick from many psychotherapeutic approaches?
I got a general approach for many different influences, but we got private schools here which you can get into more specific details about different type of interventions.
And going to the university and study psychology and then picking up the therapeutic approach, is this the only way you can become a psychotherapist or mental health professional, or is there any
Yes.
other way?
There's only a way, that is doing this course is great. It's mandatory to do that. Sadly, I will say that there are, how can I say it, garage university, which you go, you get you pay and you got your certificate. But we rather, or at least I rather to study a lot. I rather to keep learning. I rather earn more experience because I know how I can influence the life of my patients, how I can influence in the life of the people who are giving me the opportunity to get involved in their lives as a professional.
Okay, so how society looks upon psychotherapy or any psychological help?
Yes. Although psychology is a recognized discipline in Paraguay, there might be still stigma or lack of understanding about mental health in some communities, affecting people's desire to ask for help. However, the general trend showed an increase in acceptance and the use of psychological services, particularly by cognitive behavioral therapy, because it's significant present in my country based on the premise that Paraguayan approach rather seek for someone that give instructions than expressing vulnerability, as we were speaking before. Mental health nationally service received just the 2% of healthcare budget, meaning there are not enough resources to adequately treat disorders in high-risk population. But the COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact in the mental health in Paraguay, leading to the increase of fear, anxiety, depression, insomnia, suicide attempts, and the mistreatment of children and women. The total quarantine and isolation led to the prevalence of the telecommunication therapy approach, and this modality persists till today.
Can you tell me more about struggling to express the vulnerability, and how do you see that changing?
People really didn't want to share before. We rather show that we are doing great, that we having everything on set. I don't want to say that we are just a show portrayal of ourselves, but people really rather show that you got earnings, that you got everything all right, that you have a strong family, that you have a good connection with your family, you're doing vacations. But it's not always the truth. Most of the time, it's not like the truth. Social media really got involved a lot because most of the people know always show the best part of themselves and their families, but it's just not the truth. But these situations lead us to express more.
Because to me it feels like a lot is suppressed, huh? And maybe
Yes.
that you need to show some sort of, I don't know, what is the society value. It sounds like that you are a good family connection, like decent job. It feels like that you're portraying like the perfect self, but what is inside is suppressed or fearful to express.
Yes. We find really hard to express ourselves. It was a nightmare to going by alone as the for our bosses, for example. I also could check that the labor hours, the legal labor hours are 8 usually here, but all of the jobs I can check, or my patient always say that they work for 12 hours. And no one is capable of saying anything. It just changed. You need to get someone's companionship to ask for something, sadly. You need for your teammate to support you, to ask for vacations even. So yeah, it's pretty uncommon here for us to speak freely by ourselves.
I am wondering how this play into transgender community and being
Wow.
yourself openly.
Now we got some influencers here in Paraguay, but they started as comedians. So they got the acceptance by a public that really makes laugh of what they're living of or what they're feeling of. And it's not really the best way to start us with our rights, with our legal things. We're trying a lot. We're trying a lot to be accepted. I can say that I was the first ever transgender woman here in my country as a professional in psychology. And many people contact me because of that. And I usually tend to see that they don't have this right support of their families. They need to look for their own. They usually don't get a proper job or even medical assistance. I know someone who was rejected in a public institution of health because she was a transgender woman. And it's harsh. It's really harsh how that could be possible still till today. In the scholar aspect, it's not easy. We're still figuring out if boy could have long hair. So it's like a mirror of the past in another countries.
What is your society teaching about child-parent relationship, and whether these values of the society also influence how you designed your intervention as a therapist?
Well, in Paraguay, the concept of strong family bonds, both within the immediate family unit and extended kin, is crucial for social well-being. Families often turn to their relative for support and assistance during challenging times. This cultural emphasis on family relationships likely influence how therapists design interventions concerning the child-parent relationships. However, very traditional families often hold a negative perception of the stigma associated with seeking for help in or professional area. Some individuals view turning to a psychology or a psychiatry professional as a sign of weakness or shame, even. And they often prefer to conceal their problems or seek assistance through religion, as I said earlier. And the family support is not always sufficient. Personally, I believe that in most cases, familiar support is extremely important to the improvement of my patient's well being. However, the family environment becomes adverse for the individuals I assist. If that happens, I prefer that they check to build a support network through the other positive, meaningful connects in their lives, friends or someone with the same experiences. It's really impressive how they could become better or they could feel even better leaving their homes, sadly, but it happens. It happens a lot.
And how are people that leave their homes or maybe cut the contact with the family look upon in your society?
It's not easy. It's not easy to get a good morning resource. It's hard. It's still hard to say, but it's possible. You need to do some sacrifice. You need to sacrifice your confidence. Maybe you need to eat less, but it's possible to find a place or a friend that give you some space. Not all the families are really traditional. Not all the families are strict that much, but they are. There are some families that really get intrusive in the members of their families. So people really try to stop that. It's necessary to find someone to live with, someone to share the bills, someone to share the day by day because it's easier.
What are the learned beliefs regarding client therapist relationship, and can the relationship continue outside the therapy once the therapy process is over?
It is quite common for my patient to express a desire to form a friendly bond with me outside the therapeutic settings. However, I consider this is a boundary that I cannot cross. If I aim to maintain my objectivity in my interventions, it is crucial to keep personal elements do not contaminate the therapist-patient relationship. That's why I keep my personal life private. I do not accept friends' requests on social media, and I avoid responding to questions from my patients of the clinic hours unless they are urgent. While it's common for patients here to seek the close connection, a good professional knows how to avoid crossing boundaries. If there's a genuine desire to establish a personal connection with a patient, it's mandatory to refer them to another professional immediately.
And if you refer them to other professional, can you then establish the relationship with them? What is like the teaching in the psychology school?
There's no laws that forbid us to establish any kind of relationship with our patients, but people are showing us their vulnerabilities. People are showing us their weaker sides. People find therapy comfort in ourselves, but it's not true that it's deposited in ourselves. It's in the therapist. It's in the therapy. It's in the learning. It's in the confronting. It's false that we provide them that because they're using their own tools to get better. However, we don't have the same level in our relation. We are actually a strong influence in them, and breaking the limits between patient and psychotherapist bounds is not going to do anything well for them.
And in case of client therapist abuse, can the client turn to some board to report the abuse?
Yes, they definitely need to do that. I actually know the experience for a lot of people who got abused by their therapist, and it's sad because they don't really want to express it. They keep on keeping by themselves, and it's sad. They are fear of those people because they know a lot of their lives. So it's necessary to report that because they will still keep breaking the boundaries between their patients and themselves, and it's sad.
Is supervision a must for a therapist in your country?
Supervision is a must. It often provides a fresh perspective when they're stuck in the patient's development. An internal opinion can also point out alternatives that might be overlooked, elements that we had might gather not given their enough importance, or simply often recommendation for situations that are challenging to handle. That's why I think it's a must in our country.
Majority of therapists do supervision, even for example, after 10 years of practicing, or it's more at the beginning when they need to prove to the board.
It's common when we are pretty unexperienced. It's more common like that. But I will say that it's always a necessity. It's not something you only need at the beginning of your career. You need to get to check, you need to do your own therapy. It's a mandatory in work processes.
So what are the most common complaints that a client come to therapy for?
I can say that as an openly transgender person, the majority of my patients are queer individuals seeking for support, and they may often cannot find with their families. The lack of acceptance in affection can lead to state associated with clinical side of depression, anxiety, lack of concentration, lack of motivation to be functional, low self-esteem, tendencies towards isolation, and notably lack of purpose in life. There's an intrusive sense that the future is uncertain and not working to do long-term goals. Well, other common issues include the associated with eating problem disorders and sleep difficulties.
I want to get a better understanding how common therapy actually is. How often people visit a therapist, for how long do they visit the therapist?
I used to say that only really solvent people could get used to mental health, but it's changing a bit. However, really poor people would rather eat than have their sessions. Actually, that's really the problem during the therapy, because suddenly the patients can afford all of their sessions. They stop coming once a week, twice a week, and it's really hard for them. It doesn't give a good perspective of their recovering process.
Yeah.
I got patients from 6 months ago, more time, less time. Suddenly there are people that only come for the evaluation process, and they don't come for the therapy anymore. So it's very complicated. I will say that if the government at least gives a percent for the recovery of their people, it will be pretty common to get more patients. It will be pretty much easier to afford a session. Everything is pretty harsh, sadly, and only people with good resources are capable of keep continuing.
So is it also then tough for a therapist to have regular clients and then consequently regular income?
Sadly, it is hard. If I talk about my experience, I never had more than 3 patients at the same time. We usually need to find other resources, other ways to get access to money. So that's what I'm still working in 2 different areas, forensic and clinical, but I am not currently able to just do the clinical part, which I love the most. But yeah, I need to compensate with something else. No, a lot of my colleagues do the same. They just do another thing, or they teach, or they work in a completely different area.
But to me also it feels like you are like a pioneer of this queer community, being a therapist there, being also in some way public about it, you know?
Yeah, it's so different. When I was about to be a professional, one of my friends really came out and say, "I'm so glad that this is going to be the first ever trans psychotherapist that's working." And I was so, "Stop gonna do I find other people that are trans that later got their degrees, but I'm happy for them too.
If you would share one tool, belief, or approach that is a must-have for you as a therapist, what would that be?
Listening actively holds various benefits in psychological therapy, such as assisting patients and sharing their experience, their emotion, and goals. We are a population that doesn't really feel safe to express ourselves, so get someone to listen to us is emotional. It's really private. It's really good. So the way of improving communication between the therapist and patient is by the listening. Additionally, active listening can help resolve the interactional conflicts more easily by giving patients more self-esteem, prevent misunderstanding, increase the empathy toward others, build more trust. Listening without judgment allows the patient to be as faithful as possible to the narrative of their lives. Knowing they are safe and trustworthy environment provides patients with the opportunity to provide more elements that can be utilized by us, the professionals, to give it more focus on the individual own tools. And I have met people who share deplorable situations involving supposed to be good professionals who intrude on their personal beliefs, they judge the patients, and there were also situations with professionals who prefer to talk about their own lives rather than the individuals. Suddenly, finding a good professional becomes a game of gamble. Yeah, if you're unlucky to find someone good, it ends up being a waste of time and a waste of money. And I hope it changes.
So thank you, Luna, for doing this interview with me and for being so open today.
I am so glad for being here, Miss Eva, and I can say that I am so happy to share about me, to share about my culture experience, and yeah, I hope the best for you. Best of the wishes.